This is our last session. Maybe it will be the best session we have, right? We're in the we're in the county courthouse. So we've already been in the federal courthouse, we've been in City Hall, we've learned about we learned about city government, the federal government, and then we had our lunch that was about the state government. So today we're going to focus on the county in general. So to give you a little bit of background on the county, the population for Erie County is around 270,000 people. The county consists of 2 cities. We talked about this earlier today. Who can remember the 2 cities? Go ahead.
Erie and Corey.
Very good, right? City of Erie and Corey are the 2 cities. The county government is under a rule of a home rule charter that was established in the 1970s, which established the county executive, who you're going to hear from in a second, Ms. Dahlkemper, and a seven-member council, which is like the legislative branch, just like the city council person that we heard, but this is on the county level. The purpose of the county government is to provide services to the residents. We're going to hear about some of those services. They're a little bit different than what we had on the county level, and we will talk about that as well. It's a lot to do with the safety and the well-being. Since we are in a courthouse, you're going to hear about some of the issues that they face within county government, which will be different than what we heard when we were in the federal courthouse, right? These are different issues on the county level than on the federal courthouse. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the county executive, Dahlkemper. She was just elected to her second 4-year term in 2017. Ms. Dahlkemper.
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you all for coming to the county courthouse and to, I think, what's the most important branch of government. Some of you may know that I actually used to serve on the federal side as an elected official in the U.S. Congress, but I'm telling you, my job as the county executive is so much more, I think, impactful on a daily basis to your lives and the lives of the people who live in Erie County, and I love this position as county executive. So as Sheila said, I'm elected, and I'm elected for a 4-year term here in the county government. The county executive and county council are limited to 3 4-year terms, so we have term limits of 12 years. And I'm currently in year 6 as county executive. So I had a few questions that they asked me to talk about. So county government, I think, is probably the most misunderstood of the types of government, or maybe just people just really don't know how to kind of put their finger on what does county government do. I think county government makes sure that all people in this community are treated equally. That's a big part of what county does. And make sure that everyone has the opportunities in all sorts of areas. So under the administration, of which I am the executive, sometimes county executive people say, what exactly is that county executive role? I always say, well, it's like being a governor or being the mayor. I am that executive role within county government. And no matter which of the 38 municipalities you live in, whether you live in one of those 2 cities, whether you live in a township such as Harbor Creek or Mill Creek, or whether you live in a borough such as Enborough or Northeast or Albion, you live in Erie County and you are one of our county residents. We do a lot of different things in county government. You're going to hear from some other elected officials because we have what we call our row offices. You're going to hear from the judge. You're going to hear, they're not row offices, they're on the judicial branch. But in the row offices, we have our coroner, we have our clerk of records, we have our district attorney, we have our controller, and am I missing somebody? Oh, the sheriff. So those are all of our row offices. So we have a number of different elected offices. Under the administration, we do things like HR, hiring, fire, and take care of all of our employees' needs while they're our employees. We also do the finance for all of county government, but we have some very specific things that are under the administration. And I'm just going to mention a few. So we have a health department. And how many of you have ever been to a restaurant? Okay, so you've all used county services because every restaurant, every food vendor, every food truck, every fair booth where they're selling food has to be inspected at least annually by county inspectors. So we want to make sure that when you come home after eating out, you're healthy. And unfortunately, sometimes we go into a restaurant. We had one that had pink slime in the soda machine. Pretty gross, right? We had other restaurants where we find mouse feces. We have to close that restaurant down until they clean things up. And unfortunately, sometimes you find restaurants where maybe things aren't kept at the right temperature. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at. And we do that for your safety and for the safety of everybody who eats in those restaurants here in Erie County. We do a lot of other things. How many of you ever gone swimming? We test those beach waters for you to make sure that it's safe for you to be out there in those waters. So sometimes you see a beach closure, county government is involved in that. We also do immunizations, we run STD clinics, we help with HIV prevention, we do a lot of different things in the county health department. We run county public safety. Anybody here ever had to make a 911 call? If you have, you've called county government. And what you hope is that help gets to you as quickly as possible. So those 911 call takers are then dispatching out to police and fire and emergency management. And we've done everything, of course, from dispatching to terrible car accidents and house fires to even delivering babies. Sometimes that 911 call taker has to help somebody whose baby's coming a little too fast. And they get a little stork pin at the end of the year if they do that. We also run the library system. Anybody been to the library? Hopefully, the Blasco, we have the Enboro branch, we have the Mill Creek branch, we have one out in Lawrence Park, and we have one in Fairview called the Lincoln branch. And have any of you seen the Idea Lab at the Blasco Library and the great teen center we have and the maker space down there? So if you haven't seen it, it's there for all of you so that you can take that idea that's in your head and make it a reality through 3D printing, which I'm sure you probably maybe already have at your school, but it's open to you, it's free. We have a media lab, you can go in there and make your own podcast, music videos, anything like that you'd want to do, and it's really professional equipment. So go down and check it out if you haven't. And then the teen space is for you. I'm not allowed to go in there, even as the county executive. It's only for a few librarians and teens up to through the age of 18. So try that out. We run the jail. I hope that none of you ever become a guest of the county in the county jail. But unfortunately, we have about 650 people sitting over in the county jail right now who've made bad choices. So we do run the county jail. We run the Office of Children and Youth, a place where we make sure that all children are safe in our community. And that is a big responsibility of county government. So if there's any suspicion or report of potential child abuse or neglect, we investigate that and take proper action for whatever is needed at that point. We also run the Office of Drug and Alcohol. And so all of us, I think, know somebody who's maybe had some problems with drugs, opioids, meth, a lot of different drugs. But does anyone know what still the #1 abused drug is in Erie County and really in this nation? Nope. Alcohol. Alcohol is still the most abused drug in this country and actually kills the most people. It just takes a lot longer to kill those people than maybe heroin and opioids do. So, but we are there to help people. We are there to help people get over that addiction if they have that problem. We run a summer jobs program. And it's a great way for young people to get some funding and to get some money in their pocket, but also to kind of learn about careers and to learn about some different businesses. So if you're looking for a job this summer, ask about our summer jobs program. It's for all of Erie County, and we'd love to have more students involved as well as more businesses. And the county does a lot of other things on helping with all of our municipalities and helping them to plan, whether it's planning for new roads or bike paths or what we call comprehensive plans. And there's just so many other things that we do. I don't have enough time to go through all of those with you. But I do want you to know about county government, and I want you to know there's also great careers in county government. Many, many careers. We have 1,200 employees here. So when you're thinking about what you want to do for the rest of your life, think about giving back to your community by working in government, because government really is a way to serve your community. Some people ask me why I ever got into this as an elected official. I got in because I want this place to be a better place for you, for your siblings, for your friends. I have a small chair in my office, and I have that there to remind me every day of who I'm working for as your county executive. I'm working for you, for this generation that's growing up and the next generations behind you. We need to make sure that we leave this place not only as good as it is today, but in my opinion, much, much better than even what we found it now. I think is my time about up, Sheila? So with that, thank you for coming in. I actually have to run to another meeting, but Gary Lee, my Director of Administration, Gary, will be here at the end when you have questions, and he can answer any questions about my role and what we do here in county government. So thank you very much.
Thank you, County Executive Kathy Dahlkemper. Okay, now we're going to switch our minds now to the court. Obviously, right, we're in another courtroom. We're going to talk about what the different kind of things that happened in the federal courthouse to the courthouse here. I'm going to now introduce Judge Jamie Mead. He was elected to this position in 2015, and he serves on the Court of Common Pleas with Erie County. Mr. Mead.
Hi everybody, my name's Jamie Mead. I'm a judge in the Court of Common Pleas. I tend to walk around a little bit, so sorry for the cameraman in advance. All right. I'll give you a little background of who I am, how you get to be a judge, and what we do here as a judge. I grew up here in Erie. I graduated from Fairview High School in 1976. Fairview here? Yeah. My kids are there too now, so there's a tradition there. But after I graduated from high school, I went to Princeton University, got my degree there in 4 years, and then after that, I became a lawyer. I went down to Pitt, and it's a 3-year commitment to be a lawyer. It's 3 years, and then you take the bar. After that, I became a federal prosecutor, which I did down in Pittsburgh, and I understand you were over at the federal courthouse this morning. So I did that, which was a terrific job. Enjoyed it a lot, and I liked the public service aspect of it as well. But after that, I stayed down in Pittsburgh, and I became a lawyer with a large firm. We had 1,100 lawyers across the country and in different countries, so it was a big change from being a prosecutor to doing the civil work. And from there, I came back to Erie in, I believe, 1999, worked for a firm here, then went out on my own. And at that point, I was thinking about being a judge, and one thing I wanted to do as a judge is I wanted to have experience on every side of every issue, if I could. So when I had been a prosecutor for a long time, so when I came back, I signed up to do homicide cases, to defend homicide cases for people who couldn't represent, or couldn't hire an attorney. They didn't have that type of money. So I got a perspective that I hadn't had as a prosecutor, but it was an important perspective for me to have later when I became a judge. So after being in private practice for a while, I decided to run for judge. And unlike the federal system, which you were over there today and talked to the judges over there, here in the state system, you're elected. You're not appointed. Now, some of you probably may have followed what happens with the Supreme Court, because they're appointed and then they have a bunch of fights, and eventually they may get the job, they may not. That is not what happens here. You run for election. And running for election is not an easy thing to do. Anybody who wants to get into politics, it's a wonderful experience, but it's tough. You got to go out and you got to meet everyone. And particularly for a judge, as a county judge, you go throughout the whole county. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of different schools from the county here, but I was probably in each one of your areas knocking on doors and meeting people. So that's what you do in order for the people to get to know you and get to know what you're about. And so they can go into the voting booth and decide what they need to do and who to vote for. So I got elected about 3-4 years ago after the campaign. And one interesting thing I'll point out about running for judge compared to most politics that you're going to find out about is when you run for judge, you don't necessarily run as a Republican or Democrat. You file on both tickets. So I was a registered Republican, but I ran as both a Democrat and a Republican. And the reason you do that, unlike other type of political offices, is you do not want politics to play any type of part in being a judge. It doesn't matter what side you're on, whether you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, you're independent. That should not affect your decision as to justice. And so, unlike most other offices, you'll see most candidates for judge in Pennsylvania will go and cross-register, they call it, cross-file on both sides. So, but I was elected about 3.5 years ago, And what you do here in this area, in this courthouse, unlike the federal courthouse, we see every kind of case. We see every type of case you can imagine. It's really divided into two sections. Criminal kind of stands on its own. You have the criminal cases, and then you have civil cases. That's the automobile wrecks, that's a breach of contract, that's family law disputes. That's on the other side. And in our court system, we have the trial judges and we have the family division. I'm the head of the trial division at this point, which means I'm ahead of all the criminal cases that come through here, which is very interesting. When you do that type of law, you see everything. You really do. Well, you also see everything with family law too, but with the criminal things, you just see where you like to know where you can make a difference, and it's sometimes hard when people come into your courtroom and there's not much you can do for them. And if they've committed crimes, obviously there has to be a penalty. One thing we've done in the last few years, and it's been going on for a little while, but I've just became head of that as well, is we have what's known as treatment courts. And we heard Kathy talk about the problems in Erie with drugs. We're trying to do something a little different. If you're convicted of a crime, and you got to be convicted, you got to admit you did it, but it's not a violent crime, and you do have a drug problem, we try to treat you in something called treatment court. You've got to come in every week, you get tested all the time, we find out whether you're using or not, but we try to give you treatment because we're trying to eliminate that problem as best we can, because it is a problem in Erie County and everywhere else. So that's another aspect of what we do here. It's treatment court. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as well. And like I said, on the other side, you have family courts now. I mean, many of us have been through, unfortunately, our parents maybe didn't get along, there was a divorce. They wind up sometimes in family courts. And what happens is the judges have to make some decisions based on perhaps where you as children are going to stay, which parent, if the parents can't agree to it. So that happens a lot, too, with family law. We also do things, for example, I said civil cases. There may be a big business dispute. GE was on strike. They came in and I had to rule on whether or not the strikers were being fair during the strike. That type of thing that you wouldn't think normally would come into court, that comes into court occasionally. So we really do have to handle everything. And unlike the feds, which over there, they basically have a more narrow type of cases that they decide. Over here, there's an arrest, it winds up in this courthouse. So we're a busy group. We enjoy it. We have right now we're short a little bit. We have an election coming up. So we're going to have a full contingent of 9 judges pretty soon, in a couple months rather. We're going to have our full contingent. We're going to be glad to see that. But it's a great job. If anybody's ever interested in the law, it's always a wonderful job to look at it and say, well, I'd like to do that. I mean, I enjoy it a lot. I returned to I went back to public, serving the public at the end of my career, and at the beginning of my career I did it. And it's been a nice journey to get there. And you really do feel like you're making a difference. I tell people a lot of times, being a judge is the easiest and hardest job I ever had. It's easy because it's no longer a business. And anybody want to be a lawyer? All right. You'll see there's a lot of business aspects to that. You got to get clients, you got to pay your staff and all that. This no longer is a business for me, but it's hard because you make decisions that affect people's lives every day, and you want to make sure you make the right decisions. So it's not an easy job, but it's a wonderful and a fulfilling job, and I'm glad to be doing it. So I don't know, my time up? Okay, good. Anybody have any questions, come by and ask.
Yes, and we'll do some questions at the end like we have in the past. So we've met a lot of people today that you can have positive interactions because they're part of the government, and there's maybe some people we met that you are maybe interacting with them on a negative situation. But I would say if we're going to give that most negative situation crown to anybody, it's our next speaker, Mr. Lyell Cook, who is the county coroner. He's been elected since 2000, and I believe he's an Erie native from Girard. Is that correct? All right, Mr. Cook? Yeah. Thank you. This is for the audience, and this is for the reporter.
Oh, okay. Well, hello, everyone. I'm not used to speaking to breathing people. So try to keep the breathing down to a minimum, if you would. I am Lyell Cook. I'm the Erie County Coroner. Does anyone watch Forensic Files or CSI? Show of hands. I like science fiction, too. If it were that easy, anybody could do it. I represent one of 67 coroners in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There's one coroner for every county. We are elected for 4-year terms. So every 4 years, I actually have to run for re-election like I did this year. So if you want any bumper stickers or buttons, let me know. We've got all kinds of those. The coroner's position is an interesting one in that we have to investigate and rule as to cause and manner of all unnatural and unexpected deaths. At this point in my career at 43 years, I've pronounced over 16,000 people dead. I'm glad to say they're all still dead, so I got it right every time. But we have to investigate all these deaths. My staff and I right now, we run the 4th largest coroner's office in Pennsylvania with 3 of us. We handle approximately 100 deaths a month. In addition to that, one of the tools that the coroner is given is autopsy, which television kind of makes a big thing of. And I will tell you right now that an autopsy will only tell you what didn't happen. It will never tell you what did happen. But in order to do that, we have hired a board-certified forensic pathologist, Dr. Eric Vey. You may have heard of him. Dr. Vey has 17 years of college after high school. He's one of less than 600 in the entire country, and we're extremely lucky to have him. But he works for me, and in order for me to pay him, I have to hire him out a little bit. So we do the coroner's autopsies for Erie and 14 other counties here in Erie. They bring the bodies up to us, he does the autopsy, and then gives the results back to the coroner. The background of the coroner, you probably know that Pennsylvania is not a state, but a commonwealth, which means that our government is based on Old English law. So consequently, in Pennsylvania, the only position, elected position, other of course than judge, that has a requirement is district attorney, which requires you to be a licensed attorney. As a coroner, anybody in this room can run for coroner. I've often said all you need is a pair of wingtips and a bad attitude, and I got both of them. But the difference is in Pennsylvania, if you are elected as coroner or hired as a full-time deputy, you're required to attend and successfully complete a one-week school at the State Police Academy in Hershey. We're the only state in the country that does that. And for instance, when I ran the first time in 1999, it cost me $43,000. And had I not passed the class, I would have lost that and just gone back. My background, as most of the coroners in Pennsylvania, I'm a funeral director. I'm not a physician. We find over the years that funeral directors are more trained to deal with people, and most of my job is dealing with people. The absolute hardest thing that I have to do is not handling babies or explosions or murders or house fires or anything. The worst thing, the most difficult thing I have to do is knock on someone's door and tell them their daughter or son isn't coming home again. There's been an accident. So if you prevent me from having to do that, I will be eternally grateful to you. I tell everybody that the coroner's position is not a job, it's a lifestyle. Handling 100 deaths a month, that doesn't leave much time for anything. On days that I don't have dead people, I'll mow my lawn, maybe. I don't know. But you literally have to give up your life to it, and there's no way around that. I appreciate that very much. It's a great honor to be able to serve in the way that I do. Those television shows have made my job pretty popular all of a sudden. I don't watch it. I watch South Park if I'm home. I dig South Park. Cartman's my man. So, but The coroner is the only one who could rule on a death. For instance, it's not a homicide until the coroner says it's a homicide. Police can't do it, the district attorney can't do it, the courts can't do it. I'm the only one. So consequently, everything that we do is ultimately geared in that direction. So one of the other things that most people are not aware of is that a lot of the safety things that we take for granted today got their origin in coroners' investigations. For instance, auto glass. If you get in a car accident, the glass breaks, it breaks into little non-sharp shards. Prior to that, it was like this kind of glass here, and if you hit something, it'd be these jagged things that would go through your neck and kill you. Coroners' investigations, when was the last time anyone saw a freezer or a refrigerator that didn't have a magnetic catch on it? The old times, back in the 50s, 40s, and 50s, freezers and refrigerators had a mechanical latch on it, and sometimes kids would get into it and they couldn't get back out again. So until they amassed all these coroners' investigations from all over the country, they didn't know that this was a problem. The same thing with airbags, collapsible steering wheels, things like that. Although we don't really get to see that, that's further down the road. But what we do impacts all of you on a daily basis. I don't deal with the live very much, so I don't get to tell them that very often. But I do appreciate being able to do this. I tell everyone, I got re-election this year, as a matter of fact. I tell everyone I want to be coroner until I need a coroner. I don't know what else I would do, but I'm very proud to work for Erie County. You might have read in the paper here on 9/11, we scattered the ashes of 48 unclaimed people. Erie County is the only county in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that handles their unclaimed like we do. We put a name and a face to them, and Erie County and their government and everyone else should be extremely proud of doing that, because we are the only ones. And I've often said that had we ever talked to those 48 people before they died, I'll bet you not one of them ever thought that they were going to end up the way they did. So consequently, I'm glad to be a small part of putting a name and a face to these people that nobody else cared about. So, like I always say, next time I see you, I hope you can see me back. Thanks very much.
All right, we'll have everyone join us at the podium for some questions. So why don't we start? Go ahead. And real quick before we ask the question, again, this is Gary Lee. He's Kathy Dahlkemper's Director of Administration, so we can address questions to him as well. Thank you, Gary. Go ahead.
Mr. Cook, so what are some examples of things that you've done to kind of but besides just naming dead people, what are some safety regulations that we've done within the county?
Well, the county is just one part of a gigantic cog. That goes from every coroner's office in the United States. They get federal, state, and local governments gather that information. So there's not one specific thing I can say that I can take credit for. It's all part of a bigger picture. Does that answer?
For Mr. Cook again, I'm sorry. Do you have any kind of college degree?
Yes, I do. Attended Gannon, what am I talking about? Edinburgh. That 5 years wasn't wasted, was it? Yes, but there are no requirements for it. We found over the years that I'm past president of the Pennsylvania State Coroners Association. We found that actually the education you get in mortuary school blends much better than medical school, because doctors are more concerned with saving lives. They don't really care about death so much. So, but I would say probably of the 67 coroners, 3/5 of us have degrees of some sort.
I have a question for Judge Mead.
Sure.
So, do you find it difficult to maintain partiality when dealing with cases, particularly those that are like more controversial in nature?
No, you get used to doing it, to be quite honest. When you're a lawyer, you're basically taking one side or the other, and that's your job, and you've got to advocate for one side or the other. When you become a judge, you sit up there and you can feel very neutral. I mean, if there's a case, if I have young kids and some kids are killed, of course, emotionally you feel for the people there, but at the same time, you try to pride yourself on feeling neutral. You've just got to stay balanced, and it really doesn't become too much of an issue. And if it does, you're not doing your job, quite frankly. So, hope that answers that. Okay.
How long were you a lawyer before you became a judge?
Okay, question, how long was I a lawyer? I graduated from law school in 1983, and I ran and won about 3-4 years ago, so it was a good over 30 years. Some lawyers run younger than that. I always said, I want my airplane pilots and my judges to have a little gray in their hair. So, but some people have run young and have been very successful. So you don't have to do it for any certain number of years. And one thing I forgot to mention, when you're elected as a judge, unlike other type of positions, you really are in office for 10 years. And then they have a retention, and a retention is different from an election. It's a yes or no vote. So unlike other politicians that have to run frequently, you don't have the pressure of feeling like you've got to please everybody or help your constituents out a certain way, because you're able to be there for 10 years and not worry about re-election. So.
How many you want? I got lots of them. Sure. I will tell you, just as an aside, it has nothing to do with anything, but when I ran 4 years ago, a whole bunch of my signs came up missing, the little roadside signs. They're pretty expensive. I thought, what's happening? Driving through, I live in Edinburgh, the college I couldn't remember. I'm driving through Main Street and I look up in the apartments, and the goth kids were stealing my signs. So I actually thought that was pretty cool, So.
Go ahead.
The question is, as a coroner, should I have a forensic background? Is that? No. I'll be honest with you. The whole idea of forensic, and I'm glad we're together so I can explain this once and for all. The whole idea of forensic science is that it does not require you to be an expert in more than one field. Forensic means forum or a group. So we're investigating 2 cases where we found skeletons. I don't know squat about bones. So I call my expert up at Mercyhurst. If it's blood spatters, if it's toxicology, we have experts that we call in. They give us the benefit of their education, and then I make my decisions based on that. So really, for me to be a forensic scientist, it limits your focus. Quite honestly, most of what I do is more PR, dealing with families, dealing with the media. Been on television a few times, especially with the pizza bomber, if you remember that. But it's better to have, I would much rather see people have a broad education than to be narrowly focused, because you miss so much when you are. That's it?
Go ahead.
Me?
Yes.
This is for Mr. Cook. I'm sorry that.
Oh, no, it's great. I wish you could vote.
You mentioned you had a, what was it, like a 1-week school training period. What did you do and learn in that period?
Well, the time that I took it was before that I was actually elected, and I already had 14 years experience on doing this kind of work, so it wasn't an issue for me. But the average person could not step in off the street and even make a dent in it, because they suspect that you already are well aware of post-mortem changes, rigor mortis, that sort of thing, gunshot wound, sharp injury, that sort of thing. So the school actually starts there. So it's not designed for someone to just step in off the street and say, you know, I think it'd be cool to be coroner. You know, I got bumper stickers. And I'm on the board that actually does that test. So it is a little bit, it does require some pretty specific knowledge before you sit down for it. Yeah.
So my question is for so I know you guys deal with a lot of partners, the recent fire, how do you deal with the emotional stress with these processes?
And that's a fair question. I think, and I don't want to speak for Lyell, but you have to maintain a very professional attitude, and you have to remove your emotions. And I know that's easier said than done, but basically you just got to look at it as, you know, from a judge, you kind of look at it as a chessboard. Is this being moved to the right place? Is this in the right place? And you go home and you try to forget about it. And it's not easy to do, but you know, any way you have to go home and let it stay back at the office, you do. You have to learn to do that pretty early. But as I say, I handled a lot of homicide cases, so that wasn't, after a while you just get used to it. You just got to be, you got to be clear-headed and not let emotions play. Not easy to do, but I think after a while you sort of build a little self-defense mechanism in yourself that you don't open yourself up to that type of situation.
Just to add to that, as rough as it may sound, there are no emotions in my office, because if there are, you're not doing your job. So consequently, the 5 children that died in the house fire, as tragic as that is, it's just another case to us, and that's how it has to be. And if we have a problem, we deal with it on our own time and everything. But coming from a funeral background, I buried both of my parents and a brother and some aunts and uncles. I didn't like the one uncle anyway, so I didn't care. And, but there's no room for emotions whatsoever. So there, and if one of my people would start showing that, then I would have to look at them very hard, because you can't, there's not enough tears to mix with everybody that we deal with. So you have, like the judge said, you have to stay above all of that and use your rational mind. Yeah.
Make money-wise? I think judges make, the common pleas judges make around $180,000. So
That's a set salary.
that's a salary, yeah. We don't get any bonuses. So.
I don't know what the coroner makes. I'm paid in gold fillings. I actually think my salary is somewhere around $78,000 or something like that. Be more fun making that money playing drums, but you know. But again, that's a salary, and that's set, and that's good for the 4 years.
Okay, we need to wrap up this session, but before we do that, real quick, I'm sorry, is it a quick question?
Yes, good morning.
Yeah.
Did you work on the Dahlkemper case?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I was the one that had to do the rulings on all of those.
I represented one of the pizza bomber defendants. Yeah, Barnes, Ken Barnes, the guy, he died in prison recently. He was my client. So,
It's interesting.
I did 79 interviews, and plus I was on prime time with Diane Sawyer and talked to Rush Limbaugh and all these other guys. So it was pretty cool.
Okay, real quick while we wrap up the session here on county government. Like you know, I am a staffer for Senator Pat Toomey. So as a staffer, I play role versus the elected official. You know, I'm not appointed. I went through an interview process. I was elected. I was interviewed, and then I was hired to work for him. Gary Lee is similar in that situation on the county level. So I want Gary to have a minute to talk about how, as a staff person, your role is compared to the actual elected official that you represent.
Thank you, Sheila. First of all, I'm going to tell the county executive we have to come up with some better stories. I didn't hear any questions about the prison or anything, so we're going to have to kind of think through that. As Sheila said, my name is Mr. Lee. I'm appointed to this position. In my role, I'm the Chief Operating Officer. So I oversee 10 of the 14 departments that report to the administration. So I oversee the prison, I oversee public safety, public health, Office of Children and Youth, Department of Human Services, all of that. They report directly to me. But I don't have to get involved unless there's a major issue. We have directors that run the day-to-day. I just pretty much provide the guidance, and again, if there's a major issue, I get involved with. What I would share with you, and as I was listening, by the way, these were great questions that you were asking. What I would share with you as high school students is really take this time seriously, the time not only today, but the time in your life, because it all goes by so quickly. When I look back, and it's been many years now, when I was in high school, those were some of the best days of my life, and then I went on to college, and those became even better. But really, if what I'm going to end with is just 3 things that I would really encourage you to do. 1, develop your faith, and I'm not going to tell you what faith to get involved in, but really develop your faith because you need to know who you are as an individual. Secondly, make sure you hang out with the right people. I always say, show me your 3 closest friends, and that tells me who you are. You don't have to tell me anything, just tell me about your friends, and again, tells me who you are. And then the third one would be set and reach your educational goals, whether that is attending college, whether it's going to the service, whether it's going to a community college to get a certificate or a 2-year degree. Always set and reach your educational goals. And if you put those in that order, I guarantee you'll be successful. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Judge Mead. Thank you, Lyell Cook, and thank you, Gary Lee, and also please thank Kathy Dahlkemper for joining us today.
Okay. Wow, what a great day we had today. This was our 4th annual Youth Civic Engagement Symposium, and our numbers just keep growing. This year we had 150 students from 11 different schools attend, and we just couldn't be happier. Erie Together created this event several years ago with our partners because civic engagement is so important and we want our students to get engaged at a very early age. That's why we ask our local, federal, and state officials to meet with the students, talk about government, and how students can get engaged to make a positive difference in their communities. We're also very grateful to our partners, Gannon University and U.S. Senator Pat Toomey's office for co-hosting this event with us, and to National Fuel for providing the funding to make a videotaping of this event available to school districts afterwards. This is the first year we were able to do that, and we're very happy that we have that opportunity. Finally, we want to thank the schools who attended. We want to thank all of the teachers who acted as chaperones. We want to thank our volunteers who helped the days run smoothly. And we want to thank all of the elected officials and the appointed officials from federal, state, and local government for making this day possible and helping students understand how to get civically engaged.
We intentionally coordinate this day around Constitution Day and remind you that the 14th Amendment originally gave citizens the right to vote. We also remind you that registering to vote at 18 is your duty and your responsibility. You have seen in the recent general 2019 election that every vote does count, and we need yours as well. Gannon University offers a variety of special presentations and events throughout the year about current events and issues. You and your family are invited to attend. And finally, we just really want to thank you and all of our partners. And in addition, if a career in politics, government affairs, travel, or history is of interest to you, you can check out our Public Services and Global Affairs Department that encourages your path towards a good career opportunity and future success.
And on behalf of U.S. Senator Pat Toomey's office, we just want to thank all the local community for allowing us to come to their buildings. The students had an opportunity to go into City of Erie Hall, Erie County Courthouse, as well as the federal courthouse. Those students at that point had an opportunity to hear from the local, state, and elected officials and to get a better understanding how government affects their lives. Again, we want to thank everyone for providing that opportunity.
Remember to mark your calendars for September 16th, 2020, when we host our 5th annual Youth Civic Engagement Symposium. And with that, that's a wrap.